Some changes coming to the way real estate's practiced in the United States. I'm real estate broker Scott Curcio, here to break down for you the main changes and main differences we're going to see based upon the recent National Association of Realtors settlement. Let us dive in. And first, we're going to start with what's changing. There's two main differences in how real estate's going to be practiced. The first is what's called a decoupling of the commission structure. And what that means is, moving forward, National Association of Realtors members are no longer going to be able to offer in the MLS buyer's broker compensation, what we call cooperative compensation or co-op fee. Now, what's interesting though is a seller can still offer that. It just can't be done in the MLS. That means that brokers will have to pick up the phone, send emails, contact the brokers offline to find out if they are offering. So that's one major change. The second major change is for buyers. Buyers now will have to have a signed representation agreement from their broker before touring a home. Now, first of all, both of these changes I don't think are going to have that massive an impact. People are panicking right now, but the buyer's broker one, I for one am really excited about, because it's going to lead to more transparency, and really it's going to better outline what the duties of a buyer's broker are, and of course outline what is the compensation that a buyer's broker is going to earn. It will also outline that a buyer's broker will get paid from the buyer themselves if there is no offer of compensation made. Now, an interesting note is that the National Association of Realtors in the early 1990s was part of the movement based upon urging from consumer protection groups that created buyer agency. It didn't exist roughly 30 years before now. And so it's interesting that we're kind of seeing a change in how it's done. Generally, offers of compensation to a buyer's broker have helped level the playing field a little bit and have provided a lot of buyers that before buyer agency might not have had access to equal and fair representation to have those opportunities, and of course to increase the buyer pool for sellers. Now, a key question that we're getting and seeing is, will this lower prices? That's been some of the media headlines that we've been seeing. And that's an interesting one, because real estate is a commodity. It is always traded up and down based upon economic factors, those being supply and demand. Right now, we are in a low supply market with a high demand. So what's happening? Prices are going up. I've sold through market cycles where it was the opposite, where we had too many homes for sale, not enough demand, and the prices went down. Cue the 2008 recession talk right there. So what's interesting is that if we think about it that way, we've already had in our current market times where two identical houses might have sold for almost identical prices, but we as consumers, we don't know if one seller paid 6.5% for their broker and one might have paid 4.8%. If those houses were actually really the same, did the prices go down? And I'm going to be curious to see this. If a seller, those of us in a capitalist society, have an opportunity to sell a house and maybe put more money in our pocket, are we automatically going to drop the price, or will the seller say, nah, I'm going to take that money and run? Time's going to tell how it's going to impact us. Now, there's been some headlines that I think have been a little misleading. We've seen 6% commission is gone, or standard real estate fees are changing. Let's unpack a few of those right there. The word standard is one that we as real estate professionals can't use. It goes back to antitrust laws and monopolies. So a realtor should never be saying that anything is standard. That's a word that is a big no-no we can't use. Now, they might use customary or I see often, but you'll never hear Scott Curcio say the word standard, because that doesn't exist. Now, every practitioner has always set their fee structure around what their experience is, their ability level, maybe the different offerings, and there's always been a wide range, right? There are brokers that may charge 4 or 5%. There are brokers that may charge 8, 9, or 10%, and a consumer always has had the choice. That is something that we might hear a lot about here, that consumers are going to have more choice. But in reality, consumers have kind of always had the choice, right? Because you could elect to just not hire someone, or hire somebody that was a lower fee model or a lower service. Now, a choice might not be the one that you like, but there is always been a choice. And I liken it to, go with me here, buying a sweater at Target. You go into Target, you see a sweater you like, maybe you look at the price and you go, oh, I wouldn't pay that for it. So you have a choice. If you want that sweater, you can pay the price for it and you have it. Or you say, I'm not going to buy that sweater right now, I don't need it, and you walk out. Consumer choice is always there. The question is, have we really appreciated it for what it is? So when you read those headlines, always go back to what's actually happening. There's going to be a lot of speculation here over probably the next 6 to 12 months, how the housing market's going to be impacted. And we don't really know what that's going to look like until it's done. Now, one of the things I'm going to be watching closely is, what I would call unintended consequences of the legislation. A key consideration here is going to be, are we going to see a lack of equitable representation and access to housing based upon the buyer's broker situation? And here's what I mean. Let's take someone that's a veteran that's using a VA loan. If they use their benefits, they're going to be able to buy a house with no money down. Oftentimes in VA loans, a buyer will ask a seller to contribute 1, 2, or 3% towards their closing costs. And right now, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have a cap on the amount of a closing cost credit that can be on there, and it's 3%. So the lending landscape may very well have to change to allow buyers to finance those fees for their brokers if the seller is not offering a cooperative compensation. So then the question becomes, what if we have a buyer that's a lower down payment buyer and they can't afford to pay a broker? Are they going to not be able to find representation, or will they be relegated to someone that is willing to do it for $500 at a deep discount that maybe isn't a full-time broker, isn't an experienced person, and might not actually be treating that person and putting their fiduciary responsibility at the top? In a country where we have a lot of variance in terms of the percentage of home ownership, especially among different communities, LGBT community, community of color, are we going to see the gap widen? And that's going to be something that I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to, because those are the consequences that might result, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about. So I'm going to leave you guys with the two most important components of the changes. And by the way, yes, I have read the entire settlement. It is very dry. I have read all of the other materials on it so that you don't have to. But the two things, decoupling of the commissions, buyer's agents compensation offers are no longer permitted in the MLS. And again, this is in mid-July, this is slated to start. But also remember, the Department of Justice has to approve this settlement. That's likely to take a couple months. So there's a lot of hoopla right now. It may be a couple months until we really start to see this actually be integrated. So that was, of course, number one. And number two, that a buyer's broker has to have a signed representation agreement with their buyer before they will tour a home. So those are your two key takeaways here. Everything else you're going to hear is really just going to be noise. And over the coming months and probably coming years, of course, I'm going to be there with you guys, giving you the lay of the land, updates, what I'm seeing, and also how is it impacting? Are we going to see sellers continuing to offer compensation to buyers brokers to ensure that the most amount of buyers come through the door, make offers, and help them sell their home at the most amount of money that the market will bear? So always come back to my Monday Market Minute sessions and all my other videos here on all of my social channels. I'll be continuing to talk about this for months and months and months. The next 18 months are probably going to be a little bit messy, maybe a little bit of the Wild West, but I'm Scott Curcio, your favorite real estate broker, and I will give you all the information that you need.